All right, thank you so much for sticking with Daybreak. As promised, we want to now take you to America via way of Skype. We want to talk to a Kenyan who lives there and just really get to hear the situation on the ground by a Kenyan. And here's the thing, so far in America, we've lost 5 Kenyans to COVID-19 in the US. 5 Kenyans to COVID-19 in the US. One Kenyan is also battling COVID-19 in a serious condition in Sweden. We also know 22 students are still stuck in France. 64 Kenyans are stranded in India who had gone for medical treatment. Right now, joining us by way of phone from East Coast in New York is Dennis Oriwa. He is within the financial service sector, and it's around 10 minutes to 1 a.m. wherever he is, a 1-hour drive, or rather a 1-hour trip by way of train to New York, according to what Dennis tells me. Dennis, thank you so much for making time for us here on Daybreak. I'm sure being up at 1 a.m. is not an easy part on that. Let's just jump straight into this. Talk to me about the current situation in New York and how bad it is so far, just generally speaking.
Well, generally speaking, the situation here has been improving somewhat. The number of deaths has kind of steadied up for the last 3 days. However, in terms of the quarantine, we are still under quarantine. And as much as we try to battle this pandemic, it's a little bit challenging in terms of we've been quarantined now for the last almost 30 days.
30
so
days.
The challenge is in the ability to move around, or to after a while you get that cabin you get that cabin pressure. Yes.
What are you hearing from the Kenyan community in America? The entire Kenyan community, not just where you are, but generally across the entire country. What are you able to hear from Kenyans across the country?
Well, for most of the Kenyans, we have quite a number of Kenyans who are in the forefront of this pandemic, since most Kenyans do work in the healthcare industry. Mm-hmm. So the fear there is that there has been a number of Kenyans who have actually been afflicted by this disease. The good thing is most of them have recovered. However, the challenge and the stress and the fear is very, very, very visible, since most of Kenyans that I know and do work in the health industry.
Mm-hmm. And have you had any form of communication, especially from Kenyans who are living in the hotspot areas? Have they had any form of communication from the Kenyan government or the embassy? Have you heard anything?
Well, not that I'm aware of. I haven't had any communication, or none of my friends that I know, the people within my circle, have had any communication from the Kenyan Embassy. Mm-hmm. However, one thing I know is there are a lot of Kenyan groups, and most of the Kenyans here are kind of supporting each other, which is always a good thing, checking out and looking out for one another. Beyond that, I haven't really had any communication from the embassy. That I know, that I'm aware of, yes.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing, Dennis. What Kenyans may not know is that you are within the financial sector, the financial service sector.
Yes.
So from where you stand, what would be your practical advice to Kenyans living in the diaspora on how to sort of go through these financial times during a unique pandemic? Because given where you are, New York, we all know New York, the Big Apple, is quite a big contributor to the global economy. There's a reason why NASDAQ in itself is there. It's a very unique, important location in terms of the economy. So what would be your advice to fellow Kenyans, especially Kenyans in the diaspora, how to survive these unique financial times?
The first thing you always want to do is to make sure that you cut down on your expenses. You focus on looking at just covering your immediate needs and ensuring that whatever you have saved aside, you keep growing it, or you keep making sure that you don't spend more than you can really make. The uncertainty are very, very, very visible in terms of not knowing if you're going to have a job, if you're going to be followed within the next 2 or 3 weeks or the next 1 month or so. So the key factor, the key point for us is to try and save and spend as little as you can on the basics as we wait for the economy to open up. Mm-hmm. Luckily, there are people who are able to still maintain their jobs and work remotely. I'm lucky to be one of them. Mm-hmm. However, do have a group of people who have been followed. So you have a job, but you're not getting paid until people get back to going to work.
Okay, so for most people, they are not sure whether they'll still get paid even until work resumes, from the Kenyans that you're hearing.
Yes. There are some people who have been followed. So in that case, you do have a job, but you're not getting paid. The only other positive thing is with the new stimulus that was passed, depending on how much one makes, then you'll be receiving a check from the government. It won't take people very far, but it's at least a stepping stone to kind of give people a cushion as they wait for things to open up in terms of the economy. But the way we are going in the East Coast, within the New York, New Jersey area, it seems like we are almost reaching that plateau, and slowly by slowly, they might start opening up the economy.
Okay, here's the thing, Dennis. Where you are, it's been a lockdown for close to 30 days, from what you're telling me. Take me through what a normal day is like for you.
So for me, fortunately for me, I still do have work, so I telecommute. My regular day, I wake up usual time. Prior to the lockdown, travel to the city, wake up at 5, take my commute into the city. But now I still get up around 5. I start my work by 7 a.m. I do have a global team, so I'm able to dial in and have a couple of meetings and then just walk through the day. There's not much to do other than work, really, because you can't go out. During the day, once I'm done with work, the next best thing I can do really is go once every other 2 weeks. I go food shopping, pretty much. Mm-hmm. That's the nature of life now.
Well, here's the thing. Back here at home, working from home is not a substandard service. Kenyans would rather prefer going out. Unlike where you are and probably the sort of area that you do, in terms of culture, working at home is something that perhaps one would say the Western side has gotten used to. It's normal, whether there's a pandemic or not. Working home is a very common culture in the Western side. So has that sort of changed, or has that changed people's lifestyles, or is it sort of normal from what you're seeing?
So usually most farms have flexible schedules whereby either you can work remotely for 2 days during the week. This new pandemic, now that I think there might be a tectonic shift in terms of how people work, since a lot of people for me, I'll speak for my industry, within the financial services sector, a lot of people have been able to telecommute and work productively for that period of time. So the question then comes, do you go back to the office? If you can actually produce almost at the same rate that you're producing when you're at work, then maybe firms may actually reevaluate the idea of going to work. So the flex schedule we might see more of that coming along. Same thing with even school, So even for my kids now are telecommuting, they have their homework, the school is back online.
Right.
And they have their assignments, they have teachers monitoring those assignments, and they hand them in as if they're in school. So, and folks who are also in universities are doing the same. So once this pandemic is over, I think there'll be a lot of changes, and maybe there'll be a major boost into telecommuting, whether in school or via work.
All right. I need to let you go, Dennis, but before I do that, I can tell sleep is creeping up at 1 a.m. Before I let you go, very quickly, what would you want to see the Kenyan government doing?
Oh, for me, well, based on what I've seen, I think one of the things I would have liked to see our government do is come up with some sort of stimulus for the low-income folks in Kenya. Primarily, since we can't really have a full lockdown, or we can't have telecommuting or that kind of arrangement for work, it will be more prudent for the government to come up with a program whereby either they can distribute food or send out M-Pesa to folks so that they can cover some of their costs as the government tries to deal with this pandemic and to stop the flow.
All right. Thank you so much, Dennis. That is Dennis, a Kenyan who lives in the U.S. We were specifically talking about surviving COVID-19 in the hotspot, such as New York. He lives in the East Coast, which is a 1-hour drive to New York City. 1 hour, actually, trip by way of train, according to what Dennis tells me, to New York City. All right. That takes us to our commercial break. It's already 8 a.m. here in Nairobi. We want to take a quick 1 hour break for the cartoons, for the children. But when we come back at 9, we'll be having updates for you at that hour. But before we do that, let's remind you of the latest numbers. These are not the numbers we started off with when we began the show. We could be hitting 2 million probably by the end of today. Let me show you these numbers. We have about now numbers of cases countrywide, globally, not countrywide, rather globally. 1.9 million. In fact, I'd love to give you a perfect and better number of this. Could we have that? Could we have the exact number? All right, so the exact numbers for coronavirus, for COVID-19, the global COVID numbers are coming up on your screen just a little bit. There we go. I wanted to show you the exact number, not just 1.9. This is 1.999994. So any minute now, we could be hitting probably 2 million COVID-19 cases. These are global numbers, ladies and gentlemen, global numbers. The death toll now stands at around 126,753. Yesterday, when we were closing off the show, the recovered numbers were standing at about 450,000. Right now, it stands at 484,573. But that right there is our ray of hope, 484,000. But we also have to keep an eye on the COVID-19 cases, recorded cases, which is 1.99 right there, that number. We need to keep an eye on that. Let's take this quick commercial break. We'll be back at 9 a.m. with top stories at that hour.